Okay, thank you. All right, well, with that, we're going to let Mr. Mark Lashley go ahead and get started and talk about what he does in his classroom, and then we'll roll on from there. All right, Mr. Mark, you go ahead.
Y'all hear me? All right. So at Bainbridge, when I got here a few years ago, they had closed down a metals program. So the majority of what I teach in ag mechanics and ag metals fab is welding, and I do electrical wiring as well. But for my focus today, really, I focus more on like torch. Whenever I'm teaching oxyacetylene, cutting and welding, I typically spend a little bit of time on safety because ultimately that's probably the most nerve-wracking thing to teach when you're doing welding in the shop with kids, because open flame and they're over there just don't really know where to point it and all that kind of stuff. It just makes me nervous. I've been teaching just finished my 9th year, and it's always nerve-wracking every year. So I think my focus this year is I'm going to still continue with my safety stuff, but I want to do some like hands-on type stuff if we get into actually classroom instruction this year. Is basically taking, and I've made some like wooden torch handles, and I'm going to take and attach like pencils to them and things like that, and basically make them practice drawing straight lines while holding that torch, that little fake wooden torch, in the classroom before we actually go in and start spending time using the torch. That's always my biggest thing. Kids got shaky hands and things like that, and it takes so much time to individually teach every one of them to how to correctly hold the torch, and if we can do it in the classroom, it's a whole lot less safety concern through doing that away. So that's something new that I am going to implement if we get to have in-classroom instruction this year. Old ways is, I always revert back to, we go in, I take the entire torch apart. Each kid in my class must assemble the torch from the very beginning setup. They got to put the bottles on the cart. They've got to take the safety caps off, chain them to the cart. Every step, I make each kid do that, and they have a little check sheet that they have to check off before I allow them to actually run the torch on their own in the classroom. And I know that sounds really kind of in-depth, but that, like I always tell you, that's my most nerve-wracking job in my shop. Now, all of you have different shops, different setups, and probably do different things, but I'm always just very, very critical of that aspect, because a lot of my kids that I get, they can go get a job at a little fabrication shop, and if they can go in there and show that they know how to completely set up, shut down a set of torches correctly, they can learn the other stuff at the welding shop that they don't learn in our mechanics program here. So I always kind of revert back to making sure that they know that key aspect from my class. So it's going to be a little bit different this year as far as teaching, especially ag mechanics with the virus and us being weary of, our school still hasn't decided what they're going to do with everything. So that's probably, if I had to pick, my most important lessons are going to be through the torch and all for my classroom. So really that's what I had to offer, today.
Mark, do you have one of those wooden torches there that you could show the camera? Have you made them yet?
It's over next door in Levi's shop. He has the wood shop. I can go grab one real quick and kind of show you what it is.
If you don't mind, whenever you get a chance, okay. We'd like to see that. I'm sure others would.
I'll let y'all go ahead and talk, and I'll go get it.
Okay, thank you.
We had a question from Helen Young. Is the check sheet on the ag share? We can ask Mark that when he gets back. Oh, there he is. Mark, you want to answer that?
I haven't sent it to y'all, but I can get it together and send it to y'all.
Okay. Yeah, if you send it to either Walter or myself, then we'll make sure that everybody gets it.
10-4. Okay.
Any other questions for Mark? We'll actually just hold your questions for Mark.
I can't
You
hear.
go ahead and put them in the chat box, and we'll ask him when he gets back. You got any questions for him? While you're asking those questions and he's finding that, I'm going to let Mr. Pete Bennett go next.
There we go.
This thing ain't working.
How about now? Can you hear me now? No. I don't know why. Hold on a second. I guess that's good. So when we got our capital improvement grant, we spent a lot of money on a 3D printer, a CNC router, a laser engraver, and we already had a plasma cam at the time. So we're trying to learn all these different systems, and I got thinking there's got to be something out there that works with all of these systems instead of learning the plasma cam software and then learning the laser engraver software and everything else. So we've spent some time looking at AutoCAD, and AutoCAD, believe it or not, will allow you to teach kids free. They just have to sign up for an educational account. Not only AutoCAD, but the whole Autodesk suite. So you can do the Illustrator, the Fusion 360, everything is free, and you can learn them at your own pace. They have their own tutorials online, things of that nature. It was funny, we got started with that, and then I had the lady from the Chamber of Commerce called me, and we've got a business in town now that the guy has those big, huge CNC 4-axis machines, and he's making parts that's then being shipped down to Savannah to Gulfstream, but he can't find an operator for it. So he's wanting to work with us to teach the kids AutoCAD so that they can then use it on his machines also. So we can take AutoCAD or Fusion 360, whichever the kid wants to learn, take those drawings that they've done and move them over into all those other platforms, because they'll all accept a DXF file is what AutoCAD puts out. And that's kind of what we've been doing. That's all I got, unless you got questions.
So can you walk us through just a little bit of the process about getting those free licenses for AutoCAD for the kids?
You just have to register for an account online. I didn't think about pulling that up. I should have. You're going to have to get an Autodesk account through Autodesk, and that'll allow you to download all those others. If y'all want to talk about something else, I'll see if I can pull that up and throw a link on the chat, if that's the easiest way to do that, I think.
Okay, that'll work.
For time's sake. Well, somebody's got something else.
Any other particular questions for Pete? And Emily, we'll get to that question that you asked. It's a really good question. We've started asking that question towards the end of all of our professional development roundtables, and about virtual teaching ideas for AgMate. We'll get to that. Anything else for Pete?
Shane asked if it was working off of latitude and longitude. I imagine that's the 3D printer stuff. I'm not familiar with that terminology.
The 3D printer is also 4-axis, because you can, the one I have, you can raise and lower the height of the bed, and the closer the laser is to whatever it is that you're milling or burning, basically is what you're doing, determines how fine that line can be. Did that answer the question? I can't see the chat, so I don't know.
Dylan Parker shared that Torchmate gives student licenses if you have one of their tables. Is that licenses for AutoCAD, Dylan?
It's just for the Torchmate system. You'll have the teacher license on your computer, And then I have the whole upstairs in our CTA building has the Torchmate student software on it. So you can design within Torchmate and the kids can then transfer their design over to your educator file and then they can cut and you can do whatever.
Okay. All right, good deal. And Pete Dusty Smith asked, what type of laser engraver do you have?
Crap, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll look it up and post something on the chat here in just a few minutes too, for that.
Kaylee wanted to know how you incorporate the CNC plasma table and the CNC router into your curriculum and in-class learning.
So I've kind of taken off on my own little tangent with SAE for All, and you know, Google does this thing where they have work week is supposed to be designed on something that they have a personal interest in. And somebody sent me something through an email that I read, and I got thinking, you know, with so many kids that struggle to find an SAE, if there's something that they can find that maybe I don't have time to teach them on their own, if I can give up one day a week in class, which is also the day that we update records and everything else, and then they spend a little time on their own learning AutoCAD and they're figuring out how to do that 3D printer and a bunch of other different stuff. But it's not just been confined to those high-tech things that we've had. We've also had some kids that have learned how to use a wood lathe and some other stuff on their own. They have to show me, obviously, that they can do it safely, and I have to go over some safety with them individually, but it's allowed kids to figure out a lot of things on their own, and then they've turned around and used that and really developed an SAE from it, from what they were just doing there in class time. Did that answer your question, Marcus?
Yeah, I think so. And then there was another question that was posed, and I've got a response, and Pete, you may have one too, but somebody said, what's a good size plasma table and good brands? Well, my CTA director basically surprised me, picked out a table on his own. And, you know, he's a smart guy. He's an engineering guy. Like he did a good thing. I'm not complaining, but given the choice, I think that I would have rather had one that was more commonly used by other people. Like I have a Spitfire, and I haven't come across anybody that has a Spitfire. Maybe half of you have a Spitfire. I have no idea, but I haven't come across that. And so I know that I personally would enjoy being able to call upon Pete or Joey Mumford or somebody that has the same similar plasma table that I do, because the software would be similar. And so for me and my learning style and the way that I've used it, I haven't utilized it as well as I would like, because I don't have a circle of, you know, people that I can call upon to really answer some questions. So I have a 4x4 table. It does enough for what I'm wanting to do inside the AgMech shop, though, whenever I am able to get it work.
Mine's a 4x4 Plasgam. I've had some issues with customer service with them, but the machine works pretty well. I think, and it's big enough with my 4x4, you can cut something out in that 4x4 area and then rotate it a whole sheet through and index off of a specific point and then pick up where you left off to cut something bigger than that. I don't know if the other tables, Torchmate or anything else does that, but I know that the Plasma Cam will do that.
Yeah, I use a plasma cam too, and I actually bought it secondhand used. I have a welding shop in the county that also has one, and of course I know Joey Munford over there has helped me some with mine too. That is nice, Marcus, having somebody you can ask a question about if you have about settings and things like that. There's a lot of different brands out there. If you go on the forums and Facebook pages about plasma tables and CNC plasmas, there's 1,000 different opinions about which one's the best, and they all argue with each other. So that's a good question, and personally I would find somebody that's local that has something and try to find something similar to them and talk, so that way they can help you out when you have problems, because you're going to have learning curves on them, no doubt about it.
And Walt, to interrupt, I'm sorry. That's kind of why I'm pushing the kids learning AutoCAD much, because it's used throughout industry and can be used for so many of these different things. Doesn't matter whether you got a torque mate or a plasma cam or whatever. If you can design it in AutoCAD and you transfer it over, you're probably going to be better off than learning plasma cam software and then somebody else's software.
On that note, Pete, Scott Johnson asked about did you have to have a educator teacher account before they could get their student accounts, or they can get one no matter what?
They have individual accounts and they have educational licensing. I think the educational licensing allows you to have 1,500 seats at your school for free. But I have all my kids do an individual license as a student. The problem with AutoCAD, and we've experienced this ourselves, is the push to use Chromebooks. If you've got a license, AutoCAD can be done in a Chromebook through their internet interface, but I don't think you're capable of doing everything you can if you can download AutoCAD to a computer and go about it that way. We've had a lot of kids start with Carmen's class in the middle school using Tinkercad on their Chromebook, so they get kind of an introduction to it, and then because Tinkercad's done by Autodesk, and then it goes from what they learn in Tinkercad can then be moved on into AutoCAD. And not every one of my kids learns AutoCAD. Some of them are learning Fusion 360 because they're more interested in the 3D modeling that they can do with the 3D printer. But it's still industry standard no matter what it is you're doing for the most part.
A couple of comments. Bennett Jacobs said that he has a Torchmate 2x2 that is arguably not worth the trouble. I imagine that you want to do some stuff that's bigger than a 2x2. And then there's a lot of conversation going on about making sure that you get a hypertherm. So I don't know if anybody wants to elaborate on that.
I would definitely agree to get a hypertherm plasma cutter for sure. Well, since this seems to be a very popular topic, and we did the same thing, I think, in the forestry section on who had a sawmill, I'm going to launch a poll real quick, take less than a minute, and click yes or no if you have a CNC plasma table.
It may be a little late if somebody, but if you haven't taken the poll yet, if you have plans, like immediate plans, with your money this year or whatever to get a CNC plasma table, go ahead and select yes. Because we did the same thing with the sawmill.
I can vouch for the Torchmate 4400 that I have all day. I think we've had it for about 2 years now, and it's only messed up on me once. It'll pierce about 1,000 to 1,500 times before you got to change consumables. The consumables are pretty inexpensive. And the thing that I like about the Torchmate is it's actually on a water table. So we can literally have the shop closed inside with no fans running, and there's no smoke, there's no sparks. It's really safe. And as far as the software goes, it's pretty simple. You can go from a design on Google to a cut part in less than 5 minutes once you figure out the process and how to run their software. And Torchmate does a free 3-day training, one-on-one training with you. They have trainings all over the country. I think they have some in Atlanta every now and then. So it's a good system. It's it's pretty expensive. We got ours with a capital equipment grant. So we've had a lot of success with it.
All right, there's a couple of questions.
I'm going to end the polling, Marcus. So
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Pete, real quick, I mean, we're going to continue to talk about this plasma table stuff, I think, but there's been a question. I don't want to forget it. What type of model 3D printer do you have?
It's a Luzbot, I think is what it's called, Luzbot.
Are you happy with it?
Yeah, we're pretty happy with it. We've had, 6th graders figuring it out, and then all the way up through 12th grade. It was it's pretty reliable. It's not that difficult to use. You do have to have it hooked to a computer, though, a Chromebook won't work. And that, I think that's probably the biggest issue that we've had with everything. We had to buy desktop computers, and our technology folks were like, no, you don't need a desktop. You know, you just, all you need is Chromebooks. They're easy to replace. Can't do everything I need to do on that Chromebook. So, yeah, I had to get some desktops for result. I'll put a link to the 3D printer and the CNC router and the laser engraver here in just a second. I'm trying to find it right now.
So it looks like there's 31. I didn't take the poll because I couldn't. I've got one in Marcus. I assume you didn't take the poll either. So that's 33.
Yeah, well, I didn't, but our ag mechanics teacher here, we got a new ag mechanics teacher, and he's in the room.
Okay, so we got at least 32.
Yeah, 32.
So I did have somebody asked, did you mind sharing the settings? So maybe we don't need to do that right now, but it looks like we might have another professional development roundtable just about CNC plasma tables. It seemed like we got a lot of experience and a lot of questions. So that may be something we might do a little bit later on. We have been talking about doing some more than just this week's worth since they're working so well. And so that might be a definite one we might actually do soon. So we'll try to get that out. And when we send out the information from this one, we'll include some opportunities for feedback about settings that you use on your CNC plasma machines. All right, Mr. Lashley, did you find your torch?
Yes, sir, I got it.
All right.
Got it. These things are crude. I mean, I made them, you know, I don't know if y'all can see them. See it there? It's just designed to look sort of kind of like a torch. And this thing's about 13.5 inches long. And basically, you're going to attach a pencil to this end piece here. And then it gives them the opportunity to sit there and draw straight lines while they're on their desk in their classroom. So made about 10 of them or so. And I just want to give them some learning how to control where that flame tip is. That's the biggest thing. You know, I was talking about the safety issue of it. If they've got some kind of basic understanding of controlling that tip, that's important to me. And on another note, I know I'm getting off base, but I missed a little bit of the plasma cam or the CNC table. I got a plasma cam, and I do not recommend it. It's very, very non-user friendly, and they don't have a whole lot of customer service with them either. So that's my biggest thing. But yeah, as far as my torch, you know, just lay a torch out and on a piece of wood and just cut it out. That's really all there is to it. These things, like I said, it's my first year going to try it if we have school. So I'm kind of excited about doing that. So I spend a lot of time on the torch. But yeah, if anybody needs anything else, and I'll get that check sheet to y'all so y'all can get it on the shared drive.
Okay. All right, that's some good discussion there. That's excellent.
Yeah, JR says if you're gonna get one for a CNC plasma cutter with auto height, that make sure you get one with auto height adjust. Ours doesn't have it, and we have had issues with it. So you may want to consider that when you're trying to make a purchase.
All right. I'm going to share a little bit about some things that I do. I shared this if you went to the wiring breakout or wiring professional development that Kevin Jump had. You've already seen this, so I apologize, but I'm going to share my screen now. And this works for me. I actually modified it a little bit after having gone through that professional development course this summer. I use this. I've been looking for several years about how to teach wiring diagramming. I used to print out the wire diagrams and give them colored pencils or pens, and they would actually draw it, and then they'd mess up, and then I had to reprint it or give them another copy, and it would just aggravate. And I wanted to be able to have a way to do it digitally. So I came up with this way of using, I used to use Google Drawings, but now I've switched over to using Google Slides. and I set my wiring diagram as the background image. That way they can't mess with it. So I can't actually I can, but if you set up as a background image, you can't touch those things and move them around like I just did. This one I must not have done that on. But in the future, I'm going to set this up as a background so you can't draw on it. So this is a simple wiring diagram. You got a light with a switch controlling it. The light's first. The key to using these in Google Slides or in Google Drawings, either one, is to use this tool called Scribble. Can y'all all see that? Okay. And this Scribble allows you to draw the lines showing how this thing's wired up. So I have my first line I'm going to draw from my source to the silver screw of my light. Now it defaults to a very small black line. So I want to change that to a blue, and I want to make it a little bit thicker so that the students can see that on the screen. So I now have my white wire is represented by my blue wire, and so it goes to my light. Then I'm going to draw a scribble again, and I'm going to make a connection here that's going to go to my light, or to my switch rather, and I'm going to draw the line coming back from my switch. It's going to go to my light, and I'm going to make both of those black and 3 pixels wide. And I've got to get power to my switch, and of course I'm going to use my white wire to take power over to here. And I can always go back and change the color, what I want it to be. So if they make a mistake, you can help them and show them how they can change the color and the size to get it right. And I didn't change the size on that one. For some reason, that one didn't take either. Okay. Now I can take my little wire nut, because you can't draw yellow with the 4-color pencils or the 4-color pen that you use. And so now I've got this drawn in such a way that the students can draw their wiring diagrams in a digital format. So somebody had asked about distance learning. This is some of the things I gave my students. I gave them a lot more complicated than this one, but for my ag mechanics classes, this will be a basic ag science. You want to teach a small unit on ag mechanics and basic ag, or if you wanted to do a more complicated unit in ag mechanics 1 or 2, you can't wire. I mean, you could send. I've seen where they actually sent boards home with switches and lights and screwdrivers, but that can get it kind of expensive, and you may not ever see your stuff again. But this way, they can do the wiring diagrams on your Google Classroom. When they get finished, they can submit it, and you can grade each one of them. Now, we'll go ahead and warn you. You got 25 kids in your class, and you assign 6 different wiring diagrams for every kid. It gets tedious to grade, because there ain't no way you can automatically grade these things. But it is pretty effective, and the neat thing about it is that you can look at them, you see problems, you just send it back to the kid with some notes, and they can easily fix it and then resubmit it back to you. So it's a real good chance for feedback, differentiation, all kind of things that you can do with this real simple tool that's embedded into Google Classroom.
Well, Dusty wanted to know if you have any of these slides saved that you can share with everyone.
I have not converted over to the slides yet, Dusty, but the easiest thing to do is just to go find those wiring diagrams that they've used in ag mechanics CDEs. They're on the Georgia Ag Ed website. What you can do is you can simply do a screenshot, or just highlight that area in those documents, and then you can save that image to your hard drive. And then when you create a background, so what you do is you go into, I'll get off of that. You can change, if you see the change background right here on your slide, you just click change background, and you just choose an image off your hard drive that you can copy or slide and paste, or just find it on your hard drive. And that's where you can set the background for any of those wiring diagrams. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you go to the Georgia Ag Ed website, You go to FFA. You go to CDE, Ag Mechanics, Past Skill Activities, and then any of these ones that are electricity, you have to download them. And when they open up, I think it's gonna I'll have to share that screen with you.
Well, some folks are saying that Mr. Bell, who I believe is with us,
Has also got some, yes, sir.
right, and he just said something in the chat, and I've got a small chat box here at the moment. There's a tutorial on how to use PowerPoint to do the same thing on the Ag Ed website. It looks like you can copy image from PowerPoint and use them in this program as well. So you should use the symbols that have already been created. That's a good point. You want to use the same common stuff that the kids are seeing on the contests and stuff. You don't want to shorthand anything. You want everything to be pretty seamless for the kids.
Sure.
Miss Bell echoed the same things, I believe.
So if y'all can still see my screen, the distance learning resources, if you go into what Mr. Bell's talking about, Ag Mechanics right here. I'm not finding it right now. Here it is. No, that's not it. Mr. Bell, you can chime. There it is. Ag Mechanics Resources. Right there. Mr. Bell has. If he's talking, I can't hear him. Yeah, there it is. Right here. These two links right here, drawing three-way and drawing electrical circuits. You can just use those images in there. You can actually, to make it really easy for you, is you can actually upload those two PowerPoints into your Google Docs, and it transforms them into a Google Slides, and you can utilize those as well in there. So it works well. I just was showing you how to use the Google Slides to actually draw it, just like you were in a PowerPoint. All right.
And I guess, if people aren't familiar with Google Classrooms, there's absolutely no problem with designing a PowerPoint, sending out the PowerPoint, and having everybody email it back to you. It's the same thing, right?
Sure. All right. Trying to stop sharing my screen. There we go. All right.
Dr. Parks, can you hear me?
Any other questions on that one? What do you have a hard time teaching kids?
Dr. Parks, Mr. Bell's talking. I can hear him. Go ahead,
Go ahead, Mr. Bell.
Okay. There's also a tutorial on how to use PowerPoint, and it was on the virtual lesson plan stuff, and I'm not 100% sure where that has been moved to right now on the website, but it will reinforce what you showed them in the program that you were talking about. They're very, very similar.
Right.
Anyway,
yes,
it'll help them reinforce what you've done with them. Because once you learn how to use that program, either one of them, it's super simple. And it's something that could be done virtually. Somebody asked earlier about what are you going to do virtually? Well, I think this is one thing that you could do virtually if you had to. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mark asked, how do you have a hard time teaching kids to use slide drawing? For the most part, no. You do have to tell them and show them how to do it over and over. What I've done is I've created in my Google Classroom, I have a video that shows them how to do it too. And that's worked pretty good. But it's just like with anything. Some of them you have to show them over and over and over again. Any other questions?
Well, I had a separate question somebody sent to me in a private chat. She wanted to know if how many programs across the state had, or he or she wanted to know how many programs across the state had milling machines or lathes in their AgMech shop. So I don't know if you want to make a quick poll with that, just out of curiosity, or if anybody has anything that they do specific with a milling machine or a lathe that they'd like to share.
Okay. Yeah, I can set that up. While I set that up, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Dylan Parker.
All right, so what I wanted to do is just go through some of the electrical stuff that I have. That's a great idea, doing that on the Google Slides and setting it as the background. I hadn't even thought of that when we were through going through all the digital learning. This is pretty much my entire electrical curriculum, and I think this is going to be shared with everybody a little bit later on after the meeting. First thing that I'll show you, as far as my rubrics go, when I'm checking a wiring problem, we've got the 2x4s, and we have the electrical panels. I use the large panels for my Ag Mechanics 2 classes when we get into advanced electrical wiring, and I have a separate rubric for them. And just a tip, I know there's a lot of budget cuts going on. I have my Ag Mechanics 2 classes go through their electrical wiring unit before my AgMech 1 classes, and then the length of the wire that we pull off, we're able to actually use that on the single pieces of 2x4s. So we don't have hardly any waste as far as conductor goes, and we're able to use everything over and over again. This is my Ag Mechanics 1 rubric. A lot of these are based off of the EMC contest. If their circuit works, that's 20 points. If they don't have safety glasses on, I take 20 points off of their grade. And what I pretty much have going on here is, if it's correct, they get a check. If it's incorrect, I put a tally mark. So for every cable clamp that is not installed correctly or is not tight, I put a tally mark. Now you're going to have to come up with yourself as far as how many points you want those tally marks to be. I usually do it 2 points per tally mark, because if they miss a couple cable clamps, if they've got 2 or 3 boxes that the installation is too short or too long, those grades can really suffer very quickly. I've got this in an Excel sheet, and I've got it designed where if you click, when you go to print it, you can click print on both sides, and you get about 4 to 6 different grading sheets. That way, if you got a couple large classes and you got a lot of kids in there, you're not just over and over again having to print more and more rubrics. For my Ag Mechanics 2 classes, same things as far as what you're going to be grading on, but then I go into as far as the service entrance panel, hooks, use of materials, staples as well come into account there. And it's also set up in a Excel sheet. That way, when you print it, you can get multiple rubrics that you can use to grade. Something to help the kids out when we're talking about the panels and you're talking about where everything goes on that panel, I just kind of made a rough, rudimentary 2x4 wall here. You got your service entrance panel kind of drawn here. And then I give these to my AgMech 2 students, and they can sort of put on here where the receptacles go, where the switches may go, and where their lights may go. And this is something that's also really, really close to the EMC wiring contest. So they see it here, they see it when they go out into the shop, and then any kids that are going to the contest, they'll see it there. I've got a place for them to put their name, the class that they're in, what wiring problem it is, and then I also put some lines on there for their load calculations, and then what size wire they would need for that circuit as well. There is a Modern Marvels, I think this is the Power Grid worksheet that goes along with the video. This is just something that if I'm gone or out going to the EMC wiring contest that the kids may, I'll leave. I have a electricity research presentation that, you know, is something good for virtual, a good sub assignment. There's some bullets on here. Just, you know, slide 1, define electricity, 5 examples of where electricity may be used on a farm, electrical symbols themselves, electrical tools, power plants is a big one here in Rabun County. All of our dams are hydroelectric, so if they miss those, then you kind of have to come back in and say, hey, do you know you actually have 3 to 4 of them right here where you live? And then the last slide is talking about EMCs, the ones that serve your specific county if you are served by EMC, and then how they differ from a normal power company. A few other things, move this up here out of the way. Electrical symbols when they're doing their diagramming. And then as far as the wiring problem worksheets, I've got 12 printable worksheets here from wiring problem 1 all the way to 10. And then I have some just alternatives right here. These could be done digitally. I haven't tried it yet. The only thing that I would change on these worksheets is I would add in the ladder diagrams like they would see at a contest or something like that. But it's a cool way for kids to practice wiring the circuit. They can draw it in with their colored pencils. They can take it with them out to the shop when they actually go to put this circuit together, and then it's right there for them to see as they're trying to put it together. That way they don't get things out of order. I design my devices a little bit different just to make them look as close as possible to what they may see when they actually get their hands on them. So they all just kind of alternate. Wiring problem number 3 is a switch light receptacle, and that's all there is to it. So they're all different as far as how they're made, and you can change them up. A couple different folders on here that's just electricity and electrical principles. There's some entry and grounding when it comes to ground rods and how houses are actually grounded, and when it comes into those aspects. And then a little bit more advanced, this is where I get into my Ag Mechanics 2 classes in my advanced electrical wiring. I got a copy of the National Electric Code Table, I think it's 314.16a, talking about box fill size and the types of boxes that they would use. I've got a couple worksheets on here as well. These worksheets go alongside the student guide to wiring handbooks that your local EMCs give out. They've got to actually look in the books to find some of these articles, define an agricultural building. So they actually have to search through the book to find some of these answers, just like an electrician would. They have a ladder diagram that's got a couple questions and a couple things that they have to do on there as far as diagramming the circuit, calculating the load, calculating the box fill, and determining what boxes it needs. I've got all this laddered up here for them, just like they would see in a house, in a barn, or in the EMC contest. And then I also include a copy of the simulated electrical panel for them on there. So they do the front, they do the back, counts as a grade, and then their actual wiring problem would count as a grade as well. So lots of different things for y'all to use there. Hopefully that helps somebody out there, because I know electrical wiring is a daunting unit, and that's just stuff that I've made ever since the beginning. So hope y'all can use some of that.
Okay, thank you, Dylan. Appreciate that. Any questions? While you're thinking of your questions, we're going to make all those files available in the Ag Teacher Share.
Yeah, I echo that, and that's going on in the chat as well. Alex Chisholm said, awesome stuff. Thank you. That was good stuff. You must have had a really good supervising teacher, Mr. Parker.
Had the best there is.
So at this time, we've got about a little bit less than 15 minutes left. If anybody else wishes to share anything, unmute yourself now one at a time, and we'll be glad to hear from you.
Kevin, we're going to send out some instructions on that. The Ag Teacher Share Drive, to be very clear, it's just something that Katrina Pollard started. It's a Google Share Drive where ag teachers from across the state and truthfully the nation have signed up. She just created a share drive and it just kind of took off. And so it's just managed by her. And I think Walt has a hand in it as well. But when we share all of this stuff, I know that Pete shared a link to some stuff earlier. Anything that we get that we're able to share out, we will put the instructions on how to access the Ag Teacher Share Drive. Basically, Walt or Katrina or somebody has to add you to it. So. Any other questions? I mean, the last 10 minutes, we usually talk about virtual stuff. And so Alex Chisholm has something to share. So Alex, take it away.
All right, can you guys hear me? All right, I don't really have a file to share, and I may be behind the game on this, but I have just kind of came across this summer the Briggs and Stratton Power Portal. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that. You have to like create an account and almost apply for it. If I remember, I did it correctly. And then once you get approval, you can go on their website or you can search it, Briggs and Stratton Power Portal. And there are more PowerPoints and references than you would ever use. It's just really good stuff. So it just kind of changing gears here from, we've covered everything. I covered engines and figured I'd share that. And even good stuff for digital learning. I've heard there's quizzes and tests and all that on there. I have not found them yet. So that might be something good for people to use.
Yeah, thank you, Chisholm. Anyone else utilize the Power Portal and have something to share about it? Chisholm, somebody had a question. Can the resources be used even if one doesn't have a Briggs engines?
Yes, and so speaking of that, if you have Briggs engines, you can find anything out about your engine on there. You can search model numbers and find stuff out about your engines, but it could be used for someone who doesn't even have a shop. I mean, you have PowerPoints, you have videos and images, and all that good stuff on there. I believe someone's sharing something on it now.
Yeah, I was just going to show it to you since I have access to it. I tried to use it during the COVID, and I had a bunch of seniors in the class, and embarrassingly, even my daughter only did one of them. But this was kind of a unit that we'd already done, so we kind of were just reviewing. But you can actually get their technician accounts that you can have with your students. They review the material. There's video based, and then you take the quiz and you pass or fail with a 75 or higher. So you can see some of my students never took a test, and they were supposed to take. I think there was 4 of them, and nobody completed all of them. So that was we were told to be very lenient during that time, and so we couldn't penalize them too much, but. That was one of the things we did, but there's a lot of good stuff on here. It's a very, very difficult site to navigate. I will warn you, you will have to spend a lot of time with your students being able to get through it. So just be warned on that, but there is a lot of good information on there.
Pauline Benton, there's a lot going on in the chat right now. Pauline Benton said that there is a Honda one. but it's a little harder to get into. You may need to know somebody at a Honda dealership. And then Stacy Beecham shared that Jerry Stone has a detailed PowerPoint on Briggs OHV engines, the tear down and rebuild with questions that pertain to those items. And he would be glad to share that. A lot of stuff going on in the chat.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is Eric Sellers. This summer I was able to find Illinois Professional Land Surveyors Association had a really good 4 series videos on setting up land surveying tools for standard number 9 in our Ag Mechanics 2 curriculum that I thought was useful this summer. I just had to take the time to watch the videos and come up with some questions for the students to do virtually.
Yeah, that was kind of my approach with virtual as well. I mean, there's a lot of YouTube videos, and I just ask questions about it. You know, there'd be, you know, share a video and ask, hey, why'd this guy use a 7018 rod? Why didn't he use something else? You know, what do those numbers mean? You know, so that was my approach at the end of the year, was trying to find videos of stuff that was professional and then just asking questions about that. Not fun, not something I'd want to do all year long, but that was my go-to in a pinch. All right, anyone else with questions?
Just to go back over Miller Open Book, I've used that in my classes before too. I did not try to use it during the pandemic shutdown we had in the spring because they were overwhelmed, and I had seen a lot of teachers, it just failed with them because they weren't ready for that kind of usage nationwide. But there is some good stuff. There's videos and a test at each one of the end of each unit, so it's a really good thing. Just openbook.millerwelds.com is the URL for that one.
Joshua Boydson said, if you create a Lincoln Electric Educator account, you can purchase consumables at really good pricing, $1 per pound on rods. That's great, and I know that a lot of people benefit from that. And but we're fortunate; we've got a really good relationship with the local guy here, Benton Welding Supply, and I bet he gives me as much free stuff as I spend money on. So, you know, strengthen those local relationships too when you're talking about supplies. You know, help out the local guy.
I see some folks pasting about Chucky 2009. I think that he shut down his website or his YouTube channel the last I saw, unless he's put it back up. I was trying to use that at the end of the year, and it had been shut down. I used to use him a lot. I liked him too. I'm not sure. I hadn't looked for him lately. If he's still there, it's got some good videos.
There's a guy on YouTube. I've told a few people about him. His name's Rucker, Rucker. He's down in Tifton, and he just started a YouTube channel, and he's kind of YouTube famous, but he does older equipment stuff, and he's tied in with ABAC. His wife's a principal or an assistant principal in Tift County, but he's got some. Yeah, Keith Rucker, Shayla Johnson. Yeah, Keith Rucker. Check his channel out. He's got some neat stuff.
Yeah, Matt Robertson, Welding Tips and Tricks. That's a good one too. Okay. Well, I think we had some really good stuff shared. We got a lot of information that we'll try to get out to y'all. It looks like we need to have another professional development roundtable about CNC plasma tables. And we didn't get to some stuff in ag mechanics that we woodworking and using the dumpy level and stuff like that we didn't quite get to. So a lot of stuff out there. Again, if you have not put your name and school in the chat, please do so at this time. And we appreciate everybody coming. And make sure that you